And Lindsay, I'm going to make you a co-host in case you need to screen share on the screen in y'all's room and on the laptops, okay?
Okay. Stephanie, can you hear us?
Yes.
Great.
Okay. All right, Lindsay, you're a co-host, so you should be able to screen share. Maybe you could have anyway, but just to be on the safe side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we live, Clayton? Okay, good.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Great. Good. It's a beautiful day.
Just peachy.
It is beautiful out. Okay, I've got the agenda up in front of me, Rachel and Jill. If you've got everybody in the room and you all want to start. I am having a chronic cough, so I may be on mute a lot, but I will certainly unmute when I need to jump in here. And Lindsay has screen sharing capabilities if she's note taker today.
Okay.
Awesome. So Jill, I believe, sent everyone the agenda that her and I put together. And so first we have probably just what's like cleanup or follow-up work on some of the past issues. The first one being the MOU on the consensus that we reached last week regarding leave related to COVID-19 and access to the sick leave bank. And the second one just being some status updates that Dr. Schumacher volunteered that he could provide today, just so we keep those things in our mind as we move forward. And then the next issues that we had up according to the spreadsheet that Lindsay created is a grievance procedure issue. I noted there that it's possible to get it done, but I just, it depends how the conversation develops. But it is a narrow issue. And then I asked Jill about teeing up prep time, and she said it's a more meaty issue, but she did think that we could potentially at least frame and focus it today. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, so I don't know, I completed a draft of that MOU, I think before we even finished the last meeting, but Dr. Schumacher's department, or his team, was still working on a form. And so we can look over those and see if we feel like they're finalized and we're ready to sign. If you go to our folder for this year, I created a subfolder called MOUs. And it's the last file in that folder, MOU regarding sick leave assistance bank. And then Dr. Schumacher, I don't know if you have a link to the form that you guys created that you could share with everyone.
I just put it in the COVID leave folder, so I apologize. I probably put it in the wrong folder.
So what I thought was that we could actually attach that to the back of this MOU so that this team is approving that as well.
I'll see if I can move it. It's a bit outside of my skill set.
Is it a Google form?
It does that sometimes. Puts one person's face up there.
There we go. Move it to there. Move. Yes.
I don't know what you did to get the spotlight, Dr. Dane. It might be helpful too, as you look at this, if you pull up the negotiated agreement, the provision regarding the board's sick leave assistance bank is on page 34. It's a fairly short subsection with sort of 6 provisions underneath the paragraph that creates that bank. So I tried to just rely on that structure, not to overcomplicate the MOU. And so I did some whereas clauses just as a setup. And so the whereas clauses essentially say, okay, here's the applicable P&A provision, and the P&A provision has as a condition that the employee must have no access to short-term disability. We recognize that some employees have already or will soon exhaust all their available leave due to COVID-19 related reasons. We recognize that short-term disability doesn't provide 100% reimbursement of pay. I have 2/3, I think that's right. If anybody thinks otherwise, let me know. And we want to make sure that no one who's in this situation is financially impacted. And so then the numbered paragraphs state that from execution, and of course we will grandfather in the employees who have already approached HR, but from the date of execution through the end of the school year, those who need additional days can file for up to 3 days from the bank using this form that we'll attach. And then in order to be ineligible, they must meet the same requirements that always exist, which are set forth in the P&A on page 34, number 1 through 3. And then the next part says we will suspend the requirement to access short-term disability. We just left it like that. Does that reflect our consensus or agreement that we had? And maybe looking at the form will give us a more concrete.
I'll have to ask them that.
Yeah, and I can step us through the form if you want. It's pretty basic.
Where did you save that?
I put it in the MOU because
Oh,
I
okay.
pulled it back out. And,
Oh, thank you.
yeah. Mm.
Got it.
So if you want me to speak to that, I think it tries to follow along Rachel's MOU. And of course, the conversation we had last time, we'll direct this to Pam and Jeremy in our office. Try to make a statement here that we're following along with negotiated agreement, except for the short-term disability piece, that they would be eligible for this request, even if they had the short-term disability. Try to make a statement here that the intent wasn't to build back everyone's or anyone's bank of days, but to offset any financial hardship. And I believe we talked about that the maximum days that we would request initially would be 3. And I try to add some language here that this would allow more staff members to benefit from the bank of days that are available, rather than giving a large sum to just a few people. And then just a pretty basic form there, and then rather than just kind of let them free write on what the details were.
Dr. Schumacher, did we make any reference to them listing the number of days that have been used? I know that in the first sentence it makes reference to it's to be used for those who have exhausted, but would they not have some proof that it's been exhausted?
We'd be able to see that they're out of days.
So that's each individual basis that would be looked into, is that correct? Or
Yeah, and that's what Jeremy and Pam would check real quickly and communicate to them, that they would have had to have exhausted their leave.
Is this going to keep someone from requesting more than 3?
Per
I
application.
think so, per occurrence.
Got it, okay. And then John noticed at the bottom, go ahead,
There's no secondary option. Is that just going to go in the other?
areas of area level of certification.
Thank you very much. I don't know why. Do you know how to add a box?
No.
Feel free to. We will. Okay.
I don't know how they did that formatting wise.
Yeah, I took it from another form we had, so. Thank you.
Do they have to have used the days? So do I have to go 3 days in the hole before I can request the days?
No.
No.
Once we've seen that you've exhausted your days, you can make this request.
And then they're there so that when you need to use them.
Yeah, there was some discussion about, well, do we try to manage how they, and no. I mean, once you're given the days, you have the days.
Yeah,
Use
okay.
them, don't use them. It would be too much to manage on our end.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out how to, oh,
Yep, someone's doing it. John?
good job.
Although I don't know why it's highlighted pink. I didn't do that.
Oh, that just means that somebody has highlighted it.
I'm inserting it into the MOU.
Yeah.
You might wait for the secondary thing to get added.
Oh, thank you.
Gonna
Yeah,
have
but
to
look
mess
what you
with
did
it.
over there. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're doing a
We
great
could also
job.
just turn the MOU into PDF and then put that page, whatever easiest. Jay. Could still leave the title page I have in there and add that on the back end. What do you guys think about, is the best way, because I'll put a note about this in the joint statement. I don't know if there's any other joint communication that needs to go out so that professional employees are aware of this. But I can put,
In the past, haven't we linked MOUs in the statement?
yep,
And so we could link the MOU
okay,
and potentially link the form. That way people, if they need it, would,
have easy access. Okay,
because would that just be Dr. Schumacher in the, logging in through the staff portal on the HR page if people needed to access it in the future, or would they just need to contact Pam Lewis or
yeah.
Jeremy?
We haven't really thought through that, but yeah, we could put it on the staff page for sure.
I just didn't know how forms like that just,
Yeah, they exist out there, so I think that's a good idea.
okay.
I wonder if it would be easier to create a form using this as a template.
Say, oh, like a Google form? Gotcha.
And then
Yeah.
we could just link directly to that. I mean, it would easily have all the same information. And then
but
it
do you
would
guys
be,
need a, like a wet signature on it?
I would. I'd want one. Well, I mean, if it's their Google account, I guess that probably suffices, right?
and you could have a checkbox. I acknowledge.
If you guys agree, or if we agree on the basic content, if you'll allow us to kind of manage it, just, how we collect, I think we'll kick it around on how the best way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just trying to think simple.
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
I don't want to add another step to this, but I don't know what your team thinks, Dr. Schumacher, but with other forms like this, normally we have a step for a principal signature. And I don't know, I'm not asking for more workload on my part, but
Sure.
I don't know if that's another step in the process that might help the employees kind of
I
navigate the logistics.
think that puts the principal in a icky spot, for lack of a better word. I think that's a direct employee HR type.
What would the
thought
principal be
process.
verifying? Because I assume that the fact that the days are actually exhausted would be verified by HR.
Yeah.
So, does the principal need to know that is that helpful for the principal to know that those days have been granted or requested or both?
Yeah, we've typically just kind of back channeled to the principal that, hey, your staff member made this request, but I agree with Jay. I think it's probably just an HR employee function. I take it out,
100% good
yeah,
with
take it out of your.
just checking.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
question.
good. Good check.
Since it says the maximum that it can be rewarded is 3 days, does that imply that I can only fill out once and I can only get 3 days?
Could say maximum per application.
Yeah, because that's what we'd said.
Yeah, I just, the way
No,
it
I'm agreeing
reads,
with you.
yeah, just the way it reads, it feels like the most I can get is 3 days, and I think there could be staff who,
Yep.
Per application.
Yeah.
So then how would that work? So you get 3 days and then you exhaust your days again. So now you need to make another application. Okay. So go in 3-day increments.
Well, yep. And so probably good for us to have this conversation now. So we have a few employees who we've held harmless who are well beyond 3, like right now. So what is everyone's feeling on how that will be handled by our department?
How much beyond 3 are we talking? Twice that number, 3 times that number, twice?
All of the above.
I guess our thinking, just so you know what our thinking was, is that that statement in there is that, well, it's not meant to build back days. And in some of these situations, it's, they've had various situations and they've continued to take dock days, and some of it, there clearly has been some COVID-related issues, but there's some other pieces too. So, I mean, these are one-offs, but I want us to be, I guess, understanding about how we'll deal with those.
And the MOU says the rest of the, article is intact, so, 20 days is the maximum any employee can request regardless, as it states in it.
It is.
I guess I would just treat it perhaps as if you're running the analysis that they had made an application every 3 days. Is that what, okay, they made an application, now if we were considering it again, is exhaustion related to COVID-19? If yes, then grant the additional 3 days. Okay, now they've requested again, is it related? Well,
So let's say I exhaust my leave this year and I had COVID-related absences. I get 3, and I use those for whatever, right?
not COVID.
Not COVID. Can I come back to the HR team and ask for 3 more days? My thinking is no.
That each exhaustion needs to be related to
COVID-related.
COVID. I think that goes back to what was our intention, and I don't know that we specifically discussed that scenario yet.
The
It's a hard.
exhaustion was, it's hard to, I don't want to spend 2 hours talking about 1% of the issue. To me, if the majority of the people are due to anything regarding COVID, that from their exhaustion,
Yeah, I think if they exhausted 10 days for COVID, and then they should be able to come back multiple times if it's for illness. And hopefully that's not, I think that's going to be probably more of our long COVID people or people who have young children who they've had multiple COVID strains go through. I don't think the intention, at least for me last time, was, okay, you exhausted for COVID, so you get 1 shot at the sick bank. My thought was we were doing this because you exhausted your COVID and now child A gets sick and you need to stay home with them, and then you get sick a few days later because you stayed home with the kid who was sick, not necessarily COVID. And maybe you limit that to the 10 days they would have had if they weren't COVID. I don't know if you want to go deep in the weeds there, but I have to tell you that even with all this, I'm having not people coming out of the woodwork asking me, how do I do this? I'm still mostly dealing with people who lost their days when it was 10 days quarantine and then they got ill with something else. So
what if this is Form A, which is the generic for everybody, and we have a Form B that is specific to the ones that we have already dealt with, that can request a larger amount up front to take care of, the people that we've already been dealing with, in order to hold them harmless so that they don't have to fill out 3 forms right away.
Yeah.
can see where you're saying, there comes a point where you need to have a backup plan if, you know what I mean? If I started this year with 14 days and I got really sick and missed 2 weeks with the flu, then I would hope I'd be thinking ahead as a parent, okay, are grandma and grandpa going to come to town? Am I going to do a trade-off with my neighbor? We can't, I know 20 is the maximum, but this year we might have to, during this case, say, maybe we want to amend it to 10, because that's how many you had to start the year with this year. I mean, we're looking at, that's the biggest thing, people who really only had 10 to begin with. Just thinking aloud, not
So
proposing.
instead of making the stopgap HR trying to differentiate between why do you need, 3 more, and then 1 more, just saying, instead of that 20 provision, saying for this reason, it would be 10 days per year. And then that doesn't leave HR in the position of, as we always say, the bad guy or the police trying to differentiate. And that helps too, because we always want to just have rules that are easy to apply to every single person.
Yeah, and I understand the 20 in non-COVID times, because primarily we were working with people,
Yeah.
like you said, with really, serious disease, you know what I'm trying to say, cancer and such. And so that's the kind of thing you're not going to feel better in 5 or 10 days. So maybe people needed a couple days after every chemo treatment or something. So that, to me, that's a different situation that you would handle, completely different than this COVID piece anyways, correct?
Yes, yeah,
So-
we said that we would go through the normal routes for those
So,
cases.
so maybe moving forward at this point, I don't think we can go backwards for people that you've already given days to, that we say if it's COVID-related, you've exhausted your leave, you can apply up to 10 days total. Now, I don't know, but that's still going to be done in 3-day increments or however you want to.
I like that. I like the process of going through it and having to not justify it, but to give rationale why there's a need for 3 more days.
Yeah.
And a need for 3 more days. So I think we can benefit more staff members if we parse it out that way.
And I think that's why we have to really examine that too, because there is a whole nother quarter,
Right.
and we
So
don't
it's-
want to run out of days.
The maximum number of days that can be requested per application is 3 by any individual employee, with a maximum of 10 to be provided per school year. Is that what we said?
And our thought is that this stays in place through next year, for sure.
Yep. We said it, requests are to sunset at the end of the 22-23 school year.
Yep.
And a different, sorry, I don't mean to be thick, but a different form is for people that it's not COVID related, it's what we typically have used this.
It wouldn't be a
for.
form, it would just be our letter to the board that we
Okay.
would take upon their behalf.
Okay.
Okay, check out paragraph 2. I added a paragraph 2 of the MOU and see if that captures what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's right?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, stickler. 3, 3, and 3 does not equal 10.
I know.
But it doesn't say 3 is the maximum, because
Right.
people don't have to necessarily, they may just really honestly need 1 day.
Right.
That's, yeah. So I would say on the third, not to put pressure on your department, but when they've gotten to 9, you can say, well,
got
you have
one
one, you have 1 more.
Right.
Or you just let them, yeah.
I
Okay.
think it's good effort.
All right, so looking at the MOU, which I believe Jay has attached the application.
No, because they edited it, so
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
I'm deleting that last page, and then we'll just do the PDF insert.
Perfect. Okay, so if everybody's, do we want to check and see if everyone's good with both the MOU and the form as revised during this meeting? Awesome. If Jay can work his whatever on it, then Jill, or Linda and I can do an electronic signature, and
Weld
then
these
I will be sure to
documents
link
together.
those.
And actually, I think it probably should, because
Oh,
as
Let
of
me fix
tomorrow,
that.
Jill is now president.
congratulations.
So,
And did you change it from February?
Oh, let me do that too. Okay. And I'll just put in the date. It's the 3rd. Okay. Good deal.
this is our first MOU, isn't it, for this round? So I think, no?
No, it's a second.
Oh,
But you signed the first one, didn't you, as the spokesperson? I don't remember
as the lead
signing one.
negotiator?
I think
Because that
so.
was a collective commitment.
Okay.
So,
I think if you're okay with it, I think it's probably better consistently if Jill signs them since I'm no
When you
longer a
guys-
district employee.
The
so-
MOU would have been this 6 to 5.
6 to 5 was an MOU as
Yeah.
well.
oh, that's right.
But I think Jill signed that.
I don't know.
Or did I sign that?
Let's see.
Did
I
it
got
get
it.
signed?
Linda did,
Linda did.
Okay.
because it was Heather Ousley as president and Linda Seek as president at the time.
Okay. Well, I guess I could sign this one if it comes today. If it's dated
Oh,
today.
I'm gonna do it right now,
Okay.
so. it's
Well, I
dated-
have the title as president, so we should probably let this be your last
My last
presidential
official.
act. Okay. All right, I think I'm not touching it anymore. I think we're good.
There we go. It's been a lot of lasts today, LASTSs.
Okay, I think we can move on our agenda. And I know Dr. Schumacher indicated to me earlier in the week that he could, just to make sure we keep those in the back of our mind, and keep slowly stepping
Hold
forward
on a
on
second.
them.
Are you still, anybody still editing the sick leave pool form? Okay, I just saw cursor movement, and before I download it and then have somebody tell me they've changed it.
Good idea.
Okay,
Can I sign that right from yours today?
carry on.
I think I sat by you today. Anyways.
So fast.
Are you all waiting for signature before moving on your agenda?
I think we can proceed if you're ready, Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, what do you want me to touch base on first? I'm sorry.
Let's see, trying to remember.
Have you guys met again for salary schedule stuff?
Right, that was the question.
We have not,
Yeah, I didn't think
and
I haven't formally made the committee for supplemental, so I'm getting there.
yeah. So I sent out the results from the thought exchange
Oh, good.
to the team last week, I think. And so on this team, it'd be John and Lindsay and myself. Is that it? And Jay, I'm sorry, and Jay. In addition, we had forgotten to break down, and mistakenly, the one basic question that we asked. and I can report that out, and I'll send this to everyone. It was, what is the most important priority for you to have in the SMSD salary schedule? And so 40% responded no dead zones.
It's everybody in the dead zone. I'm not kidding. I feel like that's the chunk of people in it.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
36% more resources dedicated to ensuring a salary increase vertically each year. I think that's moderately similar to the dead zone. Those were the two overwhelmingly top two, 40% and 36%. And it just follows along that line. So what is the second most important priority on the salary schedule? 32% more resources dedicated vertically. Then second place, 28% no dead zones. And then what is your third most important priority? 23% was no dead zones. And then 19%, here's something different, more columns added, making each movement more affordable, less hours needed to move over. And then are reoccurring more resources vertically.
For the more resources vertically, would that also kind of mean as you get to the last step, you are not stagnant, that like each year you can still increase your salary even though you're on step 24? That's kind of how I was reading it when I was answering that.
Yeah, and I can try to put that thought exchange PowerPoint into our shared stuff, but you guys could speak to it too. There was a lot of comments
Okay, great.
About cost of living adjustments and inflation and making sure that there's something each year. So.
Right.
I think that one was talking about not instead of the masters in like 15 and 30, breaking it down so it's a little bit more.
Master's 10, 20.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe in threes, since a lot of classes are 3 hours.
9,
Yeah.
15.
I even had people ask me, do we go more than 6? I had people even ask me, is it possible to do more than masters plus 60 for people who might be going to get like 75 for a recertification or something? So adding on the end as well.
I've also had people ask me why we don't have a specialist. I'm just throwing that out.
There's one on the school psychs, which is different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's after the doctorate. I think.
No, specialist
4.
Is it?
It's like a
Specialist.
second master's, yeah.
That's correct.
So the next thing for you guys just to meet again, or?
Yeah, so I, giving them some time to kind of digest it, and we'll talk about what our next steps are. But yeah, I think we need to pull back together.
Correct.
You guys have any different opinions, or Lindsay or Jay? Or?
Do you feel like this gave you the information that you needed? It's just, you know.
I mean, it gave us some information. I think
Yeah.
we need some more, but I think it's an initial start. It's some good stuff.
I think it's, no matter how we form a question, I think it's going to be hard to move past the response of keeping up with inflation, more money, because I think that sits at most people's the front, and most people don't deep dive into the salary schedule the way we tend to. So I think they know they want more, but they don't know how to accomplish it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think, okay, so this is just me, once again, money, not usually the first one that chimes up, but dead zones means we have to do a % to the base to make sure everybody gets a raise. So eliminating dead zones enables us, when times are tough, to not both sides benefit from that. You know, there's a finite amount of money, but yet we don't leave anybody out if we can get rid of those dead zones. So at least it's something.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to ask a question. Is it true that the only way to eliminate dead zones is to add to the whole scale? Or however you just worded it, or is that just how you've always done it? Are there other ways to deal with dead zones than what you just stated, Linda, but that's just how you all have always done it?
What we did, how many years ago?
2017.
Okay, 5 years ago is we just eliminated steps on the salary schedule that were all the way across. There's a limit. You have a bachelor's degree. It's not that you have a dead zone, you've just hit the brick wall. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how, in some spots, you go 7 years and then you have dead zones for 4 or 5 years and then you get a raise. And so we tried to eliminate all the way across some of those. There's not very many of them left that go all the way across dead.
Right. I think there's about 2 left. The thing is, like, when you have a master's, you get to your 14th step, and then you don't see another increase in pay until the 20th step. So it's a long, many steps, many years.
Yeah.
And so, Stephanie, in the past, how we didn't really deal with it by eliminating, we dealt with it by trying to give an increase to our base. Even if I'm saying that's what Linda said. That if you increase the base, then everyone's going to get something. So those people that are sort of sitting there in the dead zone will get something. But is it correct that that's the only solution to that problem? Oh, no, not at all. I think the salary schedule committee is probably going to bring something.
There's a lot. I guess I would be curious from a member of the team, from the rest of this body, is there, do you want to, how do you want this conversation to take place, right? Do you want us to, I don't want to ask this, start to mock up ideas?
I would like.
We're having trouble having conversations, we agreed it was hard to have conversations without knowing financials or getting into financials, right? Because anything you do to the salary schedule potentially costs money, right? So, I guess what would you expect out of us if we meet together again? Do we?
Out of the subcommittee?
Yeah.
I think it'd be great if you have different ideas to mock that up and then have Russ help us have a financial, not only short-term impact, but, is it a hard thing you brace for to begin with and then it gets better, or is it more evenly spread out? That kind of information would be good.
And I could almost see, because I've been pondering this after we got from the thought exchange back of, this is potentially a small change we can make to improve this year. And then potentially this might be the next progression of the changes we make. Because I feel like to make this the best that it could be, there's no way that we could enact that in a single calendar year, in a single, fiscal year. So that was something that's, again, I'm not the whiz on the money, but that might be something that we consider.
It's just ask Russ if there's like a phase-in approach to try and even out the cost.
Well, there's going to have to be a phase-in approach just on information.
Right.
Okay.
'Cause it's going to be a shift no matter what,
Okay, I think that gives us some ideas.
Yeah.
So just kind of have you guys all feel like some mocked up proposal type of, these are our ideas, and then
Using.
Taking into account those thought exchange.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me again the second priority, elimination of dead zones, dedicating resources to vertical movement?
I think it's kind of the same thing, unless anyone disagrees, but
I think part
Giving-
of it is the steps, like making sure that those steps are adequate. Like Jill had said, some of that, like once you're down at the bottom, you're just down
That's
at the
it?
bottom.
Okay.
Is that
So are they asking for like a larger,
I think a larger percentage raise per step.
So the philosophical approach.
so more steps with larger percent?
Correct, but the philosophical approach behind the current salary schedule was to give people front load, get them the most money that they could make as soon as possible.
Right.
The challenge is with only X amount of money in a bucket, if you keep extending that,
Right.
it puts so much more money into the step portion of it versus the other. And so what you're doing is you're pulling from one bucket to take from another. And so, again, the philosophy behind it was to get educators the most money front-ended, front-loaded, as opposed to on the back end. Now, does that help the people on the back end? No, not necessarily.
And I think it's been something that we talked about a lot, is that the philosophy has changed in a way, in that there was a lot of thought behind pushing and getting to the end, but now it's one of those things like, we did it, it's unsustainable.
Well, you can extend it, we can do it, it just costs more money. So, I mean, there's always.
Or we look at ways to, we extend it, but maybe it's not quite as big a step each time, there's a whole list of things
Without
that
a
we
doubt.
have to do, yeah.
So were you on the committee to reevaluate the salary schedule? Is that still in process, or
Yeah.
is that, okay? I just didn't know what had come back out of that, I hadn't heard, so is that the committee that you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Was Russ on that committee, or is he?
Yes.
Okay.
Him and Allison.
Yeah.
Because it's my understanding, once again, that looking at ways that we don't have to do the percent on the base necessarily. You can do, that's always an option you can do, but in times when, there's, that's a real crunch, and a percent on the raise, percent on the base is,
So
not much.
But one way you're talking about, so instead of like a 2% drop down, correct? And you've got dead zones, you make that a 1% and you add that, so there's not a drop zone. So basically, what you were implying was, so somebody's getting something. It may not be large, but we're eliminating the dead zones by getting a smaller piece. But that would call for a total restructure
Yes.
of that.
I think everyone would agree that took a look at the data. That was pretty overwhelming. Everyone wanted to ensure there was something every year.
And have you, not that I'm praising their salary schedule at all, but Olathe's salary schedule, they don't have equal, their steps are weird. Like 1 or 2 years, you get something, you never get nothing, but then you hit someplace where you're like, woo, great. So it's not always equal progression, but everybody, like you say, can get there. I'm not saying that's the way to go. I'm not the person to be asking about that, but that is out there that.
That's true.
There are so many wonky schedules out there. Which can make it really difficult to try and compare amongst, we have to do what's best for our employees and attracting and retaining.
So does the team, are we ready to reschedule a meeting, or schedule a meeting? Okay, I will
Yeah.
send some out.
Okay. And then the others, do you have a meeting scheduled for the PLC subcommittee? That was the other thing I thought we should share today.
Yep, we do. It is scheduled for next Thursday, and we're going to do that virtually just to make it easier for everyone to attend. I know we're getting close to spring break there. So anyone else who wants to chime in, but I tried to front load the team with our conversation. And so I added in the invite that some ideas that we would want to consider is, with specialists in special education, have we fully considered how they will attend PLCs? Do we add more representatives from more schools? This was the message that went out to our team. Do we take the proposal back to our buildings for feedback? Do we survey elementary staff to determine their acceptance of the proposal? Or do we consider changing our current proposal or consider other solutions? So those were just some of the ideas. And so the thinking is just to bring the team back together, share with them our conversation, some of these ideas, and get some consensus on how we want to move forward.
I got one well-articulated elementary teacher who reached out to me who asked, could it be building by building decision? And the second one was, could we be flexible? Could you do a combination of your plan where maybe once a month it is PLC during the plan period and another time it's PLC during a staff meeting? And thought that there might be good discussions in individual building BLTs that might give a sense of how people are being kind of innovative now. I promised I would share that.
It's helpful.
Instead of like a one-size-fits-all, so instead of that.
I feel like that's going to make drafting contract language really fun, but we can figure it out.
Yes.
You can figure it out and we'll proofread.
Yes, I will need you to.
No, that's good. That's good feedback.
Okay.
Probably something around like,
not that hard.
how many minutes are guaranteed of plan time and such, weekly or monthly, or, I don't know. Anyway,
You also have to decide, is that vote, if, I'm just throwing this out, if it's a building by building, is that an annual vote? Is that,
right.
Well, I think it's good feedback to get that there are many places where PLCs are very effective, and so this particular person was like, we don't want to make it a conflict between, not wanting to do PLC and plan. They're both very important. So, I just thought this person suggested, there may be some creative things that are going on even within individual PLCs in buildings, so.
Any other cleanup, go back, follow up things before we, where did Stephanie go?
Oh, are we off? Oh, no, we're here.
She's not on our computers.
Oh, there you are. Okay. I don't know. I was expecting her to be on the screen.
Was somebody sharing something up there at some point? Oh.
Clayton's got it.
Stephanie, we lost like the whole room feed, so we're getting it fixed.
Nice.
we can just refresh that page. I'm just gonna say this is our first official zombie meeting.
I wonder if I was the only one. I'm pretty exhausted.
Just the sense I got out of the room's just kind of like, yeah, we're working. We're getting there.
Spring break's coming.
Well, I feel like we're in a meat locker to begin with.
I'm loving
Like a
it.
corpse in here.
Oh, I love it. My room was 75, 80,
Was it
so,
hot?
yeah.
I think when it's 90 degrees, that's maybe time to think about opening the windows.
So is this SMSD 4? Is that correct? Grievance procedure?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Upstairs.
If you want to pull that up. It's so funny. I feel like I remember everything about it at the time that we drafted, and then we get here and I'm like, what was that?
in there,
I
too.
talk in a room forever. Didn't you know that?
So I'm trying to merge it together since you guys, this is in a PDF,
Oh,
so that we have it to type on, but I'm getting there. And I'll get it pulled up.
You'll love it in another month in my room.
Okay.
All it does is bring in
I think
fresh
we-
air.
Can you guys hear?
So when it's
Yeah, I think we're
100,
back.
It's 100 in my room.
Did you all wrap up conversation about the next steps on PLC committee?
Yes, I
Yes.
think so.
yep. I think we're ready to move on to the district's issue number 4, grievance procedure. And I'll let you lead us through that, Stephanie.
Well, Lindsay, do you want to go ahead and share the initial interest statement or the issue statement that the district submitted? And I looked back into my emailed notes, because when I used to take your notes for the 5-step process, I would always send them to Rachel. And I hadn't sent any, but Rachel did have an email to me saying that in a meeting that I missed, you all did start this. And that looks like it was back in May. So there may be some framing and focusing notes in y'all's folder from prior to May 21st of last year, or no?
No, we haven't. So during negotiations for the P&A for this year, we did have, the district had an issue related to the grievance procedure, and we completed the IBB process and made some updates to the P&A language regarding the grievance procedure. And so this is a new issue that we haven't specifically discussed yet. That when I was introducing it during the meeting that you weren't able to attend, I just said one thing that the board kind of wanted to do this year is go back and look at sort of the larger issues that this team worked on last year and just kind of revisit them and ask whether they're working or there are any more problems. And so I would say that we did some major work last year, and this would be very minor potential work, or at least just discussion and review of how things are going.
I've got you. Then I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and screen share a Word doc. And let's go ahead and have Lindsay, instead of screen sharing, if you'll just read the issue statement, which is probably a question, how do we?
I have
and then, go ahead.
issue statement, like I'm just putting it into our form. It was in a PDF, so I can share.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when we were together the last 2 times, Lindsay, you're doing pretty good as the sort of scribe, using that form to document these 5 steps to IBB that you take on each issue. So instead of me opening a new doc, do you want to go ahead and just share, and then you'll type in as we're talking, and I'll kind of just watch what you're typing in. If I hear something that is not getting typed in, I'll kind of just draw it to your attention, and you guys do as well. Is that all right?
I'm fine with that.
So, let me get you guys open again. So if you screen share, let's take a look at the forms. And then if you remember, that step 1 is, what's the issue? Step 2 is framing and focusing, which may be Rachel sharing a little more info, maybe a little repetitive from when you guys first exchanged issue statements, but, people kind of really absorb it, take a chance to ask the questions you need to ask before we move on to talking about interest.
Okay, Zoom is not letting me screen share. I think it's something, a setting on my computer. Let's see. Try it again. Oh,
okay, there it's coming up. There it is.
Thank you.
So let's just, in terms of just an exercise to stay true to the process as you guys do semi-self-facilitation, this issue statement says the grievance procedure does not allow for level 2 grievances to be addressed by the appropriate administrator who's in the best position to hear and respond. I would say that is the framing and focus, which interesting, under the issue focus, you have the same sentence. Mm-hmm. So can we turn this issue statement into a how do we?
How do we ensure that level 2 grievances are appropriately responded to?
What do you guys think?
Or appropriately heard and responded to?
I mean, I think that works, right? You're not boxing yourself into, one solution. And it's not so broad that it's the whole grievance procedure. I think that works. How do we ensure level 2 grievances are appropriately heard and responded to? And then I think that sentence is appropriate to be under the framing and focusing. So sometimes it's helpful to say sort of how does it work right now in framing and focusing? And then, go through the interest list, or just go through the interest list and then make sure everybody knows how it works right now. Because not everyone in the room might have their hands in the grievance procedure.
No, probably only very few of us deal with it regularly. So The background here, and this is not something that we changed last year, I believe. We were really looking at the list of arbitrators last year. So I believe for a very long time, level 2 grievances have been designated to be heard and responded to by the superintendent. And Lindy and I have walked through that process a couple times this year. And I think a question was just raised as we were walking through those and in dealing, they all have different subjects, right? So in general, you're dealing with a concern or a complaint that the P&A has been violated in some respect. And so the grievance process provides like an appeal procedure, right? So first you address it with your, I think, immediate supervisor, the person who caused the potential violation. So you address it there first. And then the idea is that you should have 2 higher levels that you get to go to if you disagree. Stop me if I'm not explaining this right. So at the second level, you need to go to a person who's not involved in the first level and has the authority to render a different decision. And then the same thing with the third level, right? A person who's not involved and has the authority at the third level to issue a final decision. And our third level, which we looked at last year, was arbitration. The team reached a consensus to leave it at arbitration, but to use panels that might actually have some individuals who are more available, because we had an issue with even finding anybody within 100 miles of us that was available. So I'll stop talking and let Stephanie lead.
No, I think this is helpful so folks can kind of see what the process is now if you're going to be looking at solutions that may involve changing the process. So level 1, the grievance is heard by the current supervisor. Level 2, someone that's not involved and has the authority to resolve. And right now, does the contract say, or is it practice that makes that person the superintendent?
That is expressly in the P&A, that the superintendent is the individual who will hear.
And then if it's not resolved there, that's arbitration.
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the framing, what Rachel's framed and focused here? How, what, why questions?
And I can give a little more context, and this is just from walking through these this year. So from I think the administration side and going through them, there was the feeling like, well, some of these make perfect sense that the superintendent should be hearing these. And frankly, those would be ones that involve larger and non-really HR-related issues. And for some of them, it felt like this person has the wrong hat on and the wrong knowledge base to be able to like decide and say, how we, what our practices are, or things that we could do to solve it. And so it felt like, I think that's the best way I can describe it. This person doesn't have the right hat, and they have to go to somebody else to figure out, well, how does this work? How is this process? And go get information. And so, and then our sort of background is, and of course, in a district our size, superintendent is very busy, has a lot of duties. And so a lot of our board policies, for example, you'll see that the superintendent has authority to delegate. And so that was a question raised this year is, well, can I delegate this to this person? And the answer is no, you don't have that flexibility under this policy. And so we wanted to explore that and see if there was a way to potentially do that. More so though for the hat issue. Like I work in this department, I know these things, that sort of thing.
So through this process, are you thinking that we'll discuss who that is? So that it's not a huge pool, and
Yeah.
also those, and really, so that person would have the ability to make that decision. Will that be the reality, or does that person still have to go to the superintendent to get approval to make that decision? They just sat in on the hearing.
So I think, okay, so if we're talking about interests, I think that both parties would have a mutual interest in making sure that it's a person who didn't have any direct involvement in level 1 decision making, because they need to be hearing it new. and a person that is, gosh, for lack of a better phrase, high enough up in our org chart that you have moved up to somebody who has different authority. I will share, like, for informational purposes, that we don't really do decision-making in a silo on our cabinet level or our ELT. That's not something we're really permitted to do, right? So when there's anything certainly that would be, for example, in the realm of a grievance, that would be something that, anybody who served in cabinet or ELT would discuss and get a consensus on, much in the same way we do here. If that makes sense.
So this person, some of these designees you're saying would come from the cabinet.
Potentially could be a solution,
So
so that you
So-
know that it's reached a,
could you share is that current practice now with the superintendent sitting in the, this is my, not even a concern, just my question. Because I've sat in those level 2 grievances, and you're giving firsthand account to the decision maker who's hearing it firsthand.
yeah.
So I think that's, although you get input, with the superintendent, the buck stops with her. So
Correct.
that would be the only thing that that is consistent. Does that make sense
Yes.
to you?
That does make sense, yes.
And I think I get the question too. I guess thinking out loud, it would need to be a cabinet level member who would have that decision-making power. I agree with Rachel. For example, if I'm making a decision, Dr. Hubbard's going to hear about that before I make a final decision. So just to be fully transparent, right? But there's going to be situations where, because of the nature of my job, I'm probably going to be a little too involved in level 1, where it's my department, but I've been too closely involved in level 1. So maybe it makes sense, but because I've been involved, it's going to have to be Dr. Hubbard in that situation. So I think it's going to be a case by case, if that's how we land as far as a solution.
Can we pause for just a second? So just so I'm capturing, we're saying consistency in that the person who's sitting in on the hearing is also the person who would have the authority to make the final decision. Is that what you're?
Like, what I interpret this is that that member of the cabinet or whoever has sat in on the level 2 grievance, heard all the information, done whatever due diligence they need to do. They bring a recommendation to the board based, to get consensus on
Yes.
it. And if for some reason the superintendent needed more information, is there a method to go back and, do you ever go
Well-
back to that original? Because when you most people here probably don't know, sitting in at least on my team, know a level 2 grievance, but, you have the opportunity, you've written up your grievance, and then you have the opportunity, if you want, to share further information. And also, the person listening sometimes asks questions, sometimes doesn't. So I just want to make sure that we're not creating something that should streamline to make these go more efficiently, get bogged down if.
And efficiency, I would think, is the word. So I would think it would work like it does now. The person who has that meeting and sits down with the professional employee and their representative is the person that issues the level 2 grievance response.
Guys, I'm gonna, Rachel, hold your thought.
Yeah.
So you all are considering solutions as you're
Yes, we
asking
are.
each other questions. And I've only heard one interest
Yep.
in all this conversation, that's efficiency. So if you want to,
Yeah.
even the interests that are listed here, you're saying the administrator with the most knowledge and the best ability to hear the grievance. Let's just back up. And if Lindsay, if you put your bullet point up, and I think you could cut and copy, efficiency is one interest. Everything else they're almost solutions sort of
Yeah.
embedded, or the assumptions of solutions. You guys are skipping interest right now. So, and remember, interest are not the terms that you'll accept if you do changes, and interest are not your position. Interest are why there needs to be a change. So one reason is to make it more efficient. I don't know if you want to explain or if that's it.
Oh, well, like we've just had scheduling issues. I mean, a superintendent's really, really busy. And so it's really frustrating when the association provides 3 dates and we like cannot possibly make them work, right? So
how is this different
frustrating.
than a discipline hearing that I oversee?
Well, it's not disciplinary.
Correct, but I'm just saying the format.
It's pretty similar. I mean, you hear someone out. I will always tell who's ever there for the association, because I will usually attend those since the next step is arbitration. So I want to make sure I'm appropriately informed, that I'm always open to dialogue afterwards. So sometimes we start, like ELT will start getting these ideas of what if we did this, or would this be better, or we didn't ask that question. And so we'll have sometimes back and forth dialogue either before or after. But yeah, then that person just renders an explanatory response at the conclusion within 10 days. We try and get it sooner.
A response with a decision, ultimately it's a decision.
Correct.
It's usually,
It is kind of, I can see structurally, like you say, it's not discipline, but right now you are the agent of the superintendent in disciplinary hearings, and this would be different agents in more of
I
a,
guess I was overlooking the process, the protocol for what it looks like. And if it's similar, then would it be reasonable to identify designees who would be eligible to perform those types of hearings?
I'm going to say, Lindsay, put that down under a possible solution. And then I'm going to jump us back up. Instead of exploring that solution, it's going to be captured here, because remember, you will explore solutions.
okay,
But
so,
let's go up and talk more about interest. So one interest is efficiency is one word. You're also saying timeliness, correct?
timeliness and,
Like if
and not, I'm trying to say like, okay, what I'm thinking is the appropriate person there. So what do we call, what's a better term for that? That you want,
The person with the most knowledge.
yeah, so you want a productivity, or,
The necessary designee with the
Yeah.
appropriate knowledge.
yeah, you want someone there who, you want to be able to, okay, okay, do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to come up with a word. You have efficiency, it's so
Yeah.
tight, but this word is like, you
Well, I
want.
think efficiency, and you want things to be
Ensure
timely and
effectiveness.
efficient, right? So I think that's okay to say timely/efficient. In other words, people don't want to wait forever to get to step 2.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about efficiency, you don't want someone that has to keep looping back because they're so out of the loop.
Right.
Yeah, but also, well, yeah, they may not be out of the loop, but you just want the best person.
Right,
For
and
the
the
job.
word best is used up top, under the framing and focusing, the administrator who is in the best position. So I'm going to go ahead and not challenge y'all too much that you're not going to get outside the box. It is going to be an administrator, and I assume one, but you do have to define a little bit what makes the person in the best position. What does that mean?
so something to do with like, we have our,
Their scope of duties.
within their scope of their duties.
Knowledgeable within the scope of,
I think this is a two-sided best interest. I think, so, I'm sorry, I'm really trying to do an
Yeah.
interest here. So it's an interest from the district because of the efficiency, the time saving. It's important from the person who's brought the grievance because they're going to get a better hearing from someone who understands
The details.
the details, understands kind of
I would
the
agree. I would say
situation.
that's important from the district as well.
Yeah.
So you've got the knowledge and the background to be able to relate to the scenario, to be able to have experience with the scenario, and to be able to pass the best and fairest judgment on the scenario.
So you said the word
So it's
relate, so,
administrator who has working
Relatable.
knowledge, is that an okay
Yeah.
phrase?
yeah.
Administrator who has working knowledge. And then now you raise the issue of fairness. Is fairness and interest separate than this? Related, but separate?
Well, I think, and it was getting to what I was going to say, was that there's an interest in the staff member of having actual consideration versus a stamping of a previous level 1.
So does that mean this person needs to have authority or independence?
Right, so
Yes.
like, to me, for example, if Jeremy Higgins heard a level 1, Dr. Schumacher would not hear level 2. Now, if it was a building principal and it had something to do with plan time or something like that, or leave or those kinds of things, I think it could be appropriately heard. But I think no involvement, no direct involvement.
And Rachel,
level one.
I don't know what those relationships are, but did you
Impartiality.
just outline where you wouldn't want someone that is in a subordinate position to the person who already denied the grievance?
Yes.
Direct
Okay.
subordinate,
Yes,
because,
yeah.
I mean, it all.
Gotcha. In other words, they don't want to overrule their boss's previous decision. You don't want someone that's in that position.
Or.
No,
there-
you don't want to have to,
You don't want to have to overrule
Undercut,
your
yeah.
direct report.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're
To
both,
the
right.
opposite, something that
Right.
your direct subordinate.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, correct?
No, it wouldn't be a vice versa.
it could never go the other way.
Okay, it could never. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so you guys are looking for timeliness, efficiency, knowledge, working knowledge, making sure the person who's hearing this has some working knowledge, that they can be fair, have the authority to make decisions, and impartiality in terms of the power structure is, I think, what you're saying. Supervisory reporting power structure. Any other interest here?
I would
I would-
say maximize the ability of those sitting in the level 2 grievance process to come up with solutions that might resolve the concerns, right? Like increase the possibility of resolving at level 2.
Which may reduce arbitration.
Yeah, because, I mean, again, more than anyone at this table, I'm sort of outside the day-to-day school world, and sometimes just being a participant in those, I feel like I'm just blinking, like, I don't, this isn't familiar to me, I don't know.
And I would hope that that was done at level 1 as well. And they don't, that's the main goal of
Yes,
that, to work towards a
absolutely.
resolution, but even more so at level 2 as well.
And I
And
would
we
think-
can still, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and I would think that, having that impartiality, you're outside of the situation, and it is your area of expertise, like you could, come up with something a little bit easier when you're outside of it.
I think it's okay to now move on and brainstorm solutions. You were starting to get in the weeds on that. Remember, if you don't have your interests listed, it's hard to test your solutions to make sure they met the interest. And it starts, there's more chance for conflict and disagreement on the solutions if you weren't real clear about joint interests. And I think now you are real clear. So the first idea that came forward just as a brainstorm, I'm not sure who put it up, that said, could there be a list of approved designees? One idea. What were the other ideas? I think Rachel and Linda and Dr. Shoemaker all had some ideas going.
Would that be similar? I know I heard you guys say including ELT, the cabinet. I don't know if that would be separate from approved designees.
So I think we leave the possibility of the superintendent.
Or the superintendent's designee,
Or-
which is how everything that we have in our structure is designed.
Perhaps with some qualifiers, or,
With those qualifiers. So the qualifiers that we agree on in this group, but yet it would still be the designee, if not the superintendent, which again, in everything in our chart, that is the way that we are structured as an organization.
or a designee who may be.
Do we?
The thing, I always
in
worry
other-
about using terminology because I feel like we have changed the acronyms as to every time somebody changes the org chart, right? Like,
In other instances, is there anything like qualifying or their designee?
it just says or designee.
Or designee. And we created that chart this year at the beginning of the school year.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the name of that chart, but
Is it the circle one?
no, it's not the circle.
Oh.
It is a very detailed process when there are concerns across the district or issues or challenges, call them what you will, that there is a level by level by level process and an end stopgap at the end before any type of appeal process has been put in place.
Knowing that level 3 is arbitration, it seems like the superintendent, if they're gonna get someone else, is gonna probably make sure that person can make the decision and.
I wonder if for sake of the employee, you don't want to get too far away from the superintendent, right? So do you want to say
We could list titles.
executive position? Because I was thinking like our cabinet, and if it was a curriculum issue, maybe it'd be Dr. Dennis.
Do all
But-
those people have superintendent in their title?
No.
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 ELT?
Mm-hmm.
Had
I mean, I don't, but I would never hear
Mr.
one.
Stubblefield, myself, and Joe. Dr. Gilhouse.
Is there anyone outside of that that we feel like a grievance could arise, that they would be the best person?
If we're going back to like fairness, I think it can't be a super wide circle.
Yeah.
I think it has to be pretty close to what you mentioned there. Otherwise, it can be somebody so far removed from the superintendent that that might actually lead you more to arbitration because you think, how much was this really vetted by
Right.
the person who reports directly to the board?
For cleanliness, for future changes to the organization, does executive positions, does that make it clean enough, or associate superintendent and above?
I
Yeah.
think the latter, because I think, like, we didn't use the term executive when I started here.
That's true.
It used to be assistant superintendent.
And I think that if we note that this change was made this year, then if the titles change, then we do contract language
Yeah.
cleanup on that. We don't, that's part of,
Yeah.
to make that
Dr.
appropriate.
Gilhouse, has there traditionally been, at the level below, directly below the superintendent, have those individuals had superintendent in their title?
That's correct. There were more back in the day, and they did change from assistant to associate, but now it is literally down to 2 associate superintendents and a deputy, and that is it.
Okay.
But there used to be as many as 4 or 5.
So you said something, Rachel, that made me pause. If what I've been in level 2 grievances limitedly, but such, the person comes, the staff member comes and presents their information. Superintendent might ask some clarifying questions, asks if the educator wants to offer anything else. Are you thinking at this level 2 grievance, it seems to me then what happens is we just get a report within 10 days, whether it's, okay, so I've only seen ones where they're just not approved. So what happens in between if there's like some common ground of, because generally speaking, in level 2, you say what it is that what you want to see, what you want out of it. Is there some give and take where you, maybe at this level, the UD and the attorney that says, would you consider this to settle this? I know we did some of that with the, not grievance, but in another type situation in the past, so.
Yeah, so, and of course, one of the benefit of having the individuals we have on our team, they know how we've worked it recently, but I have on several of them had back and forth with whoever the professional employees representative was, which on the ones that recently have all been Kevin Scarrow. And so sometimes I will call and say, well, what if this? Well, what if this? And sometimes I think if he was like, yes, I've talked to the professional employee, they are great, then I might not even send a response. I might just send a confirming email. This will happen, we've agreed, and the grievance is dropped at this point. Recently, unfortunately, we haven't had any of those, so I've just extended those offers in the response. But we do try, and we would make sure that the same approach was taken if we were to adopt a solution that transitioned from there being possible designees, that we try and give a thorough explanation of the basis for the decision, as well as here's some things that we can do, either granted or alternatively, here's some things we can do. But sometimes, yeah, if the employee was saying, I'm satisfied, we can drop it, and we might not even do a response. It might be considered resolved at that point.
Okay.
But they're entitled to one if they want it, either way.
So we're thinking something superintendent or their designee who also has superintendent in their title.
Who may
Which is
be,
not the best wording for that, but
or to superintendent or a designee who is an administrator with superintendent in their title.
It would really just be
Seems
the
clunky.
superintendent, deputy, or associate superintendent.
I think that's the easy.
Okay.
That's,
And we just
Perfect.
look
That's
at it
the-
if for some reason there's some different flowery title given to these people. Okay.
You know, a real
You're very
benefit,
flowery.
a real benefit of IB and our IBB and our shared folders too is that if
The
for
history.
down the road, people are like, okay, we don't have associate superintendents. Now you can go back through those documents and find when that happened and see the intent through the issues forms and such. What'd you say?
That's a heck of a change. No associate superintendents anymore.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be in favor of
We
that.
would all appreciate it if we just have that
We are the
consistency
board.
of title. Yeah.
Are there other solutions that anyone's kind of thinking, but you haven't put it out there yet? It seems like you're generating some heat around this one and going into detail a little bit. If there's another solution that may not be down this track, it's okay to put it out. Remember, the more options you have to look at, probably the better solution you're going to have. I just want to invite anyone who hasn't weighed in here, if you've got something else bubbling up, throw it out there.
I would just like to hope we could solve all of them at level 1.
The only thing I thought of was adding more time, and I don't, to achieve the efficiency, but I don't think it necessarily achieves the best hat or the best, in the best position one.
Do we feel
But our
like it-
timelines aren't super tight right now, in my opinion. It's just difficult people's schedules.
Sorry, I didn't
No,
mean to
no.
interrupt you. I just didn't know, do we feel like it's important to memorialize that there, in that response, there might be a, hey, these are some other solutions type of thing, or is that, I don't know,
Yeah.
because if that's a practice, that is currently happening, but
Well,
may not always happen?
going back to an interest, we always want to try to be able to resolve the problem at the most lowest level.
Which I think that's stated.
Yeah, and I also think that's part of efficiency and fairness and all that there, so.
It's funny, the grievance procedure is one of the most bulky sections.
It is a very
In the
coveted
PNA.
section across the state of Kansas by our peers.
Can you just get some more hats,
A
please?
grievance procedure and grievances can really harm a relationship if it's not something if the procedure's not perceived as fair or efficient. So I think it's also about just making sure there aren't sort of side issues with the grievance procedure that could be harmful to the relationship you all hold.
And I will say, part of the reason we're bringing this is because, please, we do spend time. It's not, we want to be able to have the time and space to talk about it. And so they are time consuming just by virtue of us wanting to try and resolve them. So we want to make sure that we have that time to continue to devote. And a lot of times we'll take nights to sleep on it. I will have back and forth with the representative to try and get somewhere. I mean, the professional employee at the end, they might not be happy with it, but I do want them to know that serious consideration was given.
I also think, just because this is YouTubed and people hear this, a purpose of a grievance, it's not personal in any nature. There is a difference of opinion in the interpretation of the contract, and it is in the best interest of having a healthy relationship between both parties that you be able to have a mechanism to come and try and resolve those. And so I think bringing, someone who wears the right hat to the process is going to have perhaps over time, maybe not initially, but over time, have the perspective of commonality of issues and such. Not that things need to be treated the same, but you just have a broader sense of, how things evolved.
Yeah.
If there are no other standalone, unique ideas separate than this for resolution, and if this seems to feel acceptable, can we scroll up and just make sure, does it meet the interest, or at least it doesn't harm any? So take a look at that. Does it make sure that someone that is knowledgeable is going to be in that position? Does it meet those interests? Doesn't necessarily have to meet them all, but should address them, and don't know how strongly it meets them, but does it do the trick? Have you look at that, and then you may want to see if you have consensus on this. Is the next step, if you do have consensus, is the next step someone drafting the change in language under step 2? If there is consensus on this, is it just a matter of language change, or is there anything else that needs to happen beyond language change to ensure that it's applied the way you all intend for this to be applied?
So I think we would do a TA with possible red line language, which honestly wouldn't take that long. If we want to take the time, we can quickly like throw one in there.
Can we go back to one of the interests just real quick? I just want, since this is such a big deal, but the increase the ability to resolve issues at level 2, is that because whoever you assign it to has more time than the superintendent does, has the background to offer problem-solving possibilities, or have that lead that discussion during a level 2 grievance meeting? I just need a little clarity on how, because I'm all for that, it saves, it's better for everybody, so.
In my mind, it was background. And again, sitting in those, my mind will just be blank. I'm like, I had no idea this was even going on, or this was even an issue. So the requisite background and knowledge, but also the ability to come up with possible resolutions. Because it just seems like there's some times that afterward we're like, well, gosh, we could have done that, or we could have done that. Or frankly, because we have been giving a lot of time. I mean, there's just a lot of time where the superintendent is doing research, right? Like going to somebody like, hey, let's say X happened and, Jane Smith filed a grievance about it. Could we do, and just trying to figure it out. And it's like, well, that's not very efficient when they're just going to ask all these questions back and forth. So that was my thought.
If it's more your domain, it's easier to come up with
Correct.
possible solutions.
Right.
There's a desire also.
Okay, well, I'm trying to find that language, level 2. Okay, so I'm gonna copy all of this level 2 language into.
Well, I would say let's hold off for just a sec, and let's see if
okay.
we have consensus with some thumbs. Any final questions, any thoughts before we sort of go around the room? And whenever you're ready, and Rachel typically is calling for consensus when we get to that point. I feel like we're at that point, but tell me if I'm reading it wrong.
I think so.
Okay.
Oh, are we doing it?
Doing it.
Sorry.
Some of us need verbal clues.
Okay.
Okay, so I am putting.
Rachel, have you copied a red line in yet?
Okay, so I created a folder called TAs because we don't have those yet.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll need them, obviously, going forward anyway.
Guys, a reminder, because someday I'm not going to be with you. I'm determined someday to not be with you. But just a reminder, consensus, you guys always have thumbs up. It means I love this. This completely solves the interest. Couldn't have done better. That's great. You guys usually have thumbs up. You can have consensus and still be sort of here. Remember that when you in training, you guys don't use it much, but it's like, I don't love it. I don't know that it guarantees things, but it feels like it's where we're at. That's still consensus, right? And then the only thing that does is not consensus is down. So I just wanted to say that. I don't know why. I think it's helpful in the future. So yeah, go ahead. Process. What do you guys need to do right now? You want to try to redline it now, Rachel?
Yeah, redlining is so different in Google Docs.
I don't like Google Docs. I like
It's green.
Microsoft Word.
No, it's better, but
Google Docs is for young people.
No, it's.
I think.
it's-
I bet
no,
Lindsay
it's
likes
true.
Google Docs. She's doing the young people dance.
Hey,
I'm trying to. That's the age I'm at, where I'm just trying to do the young people dance
I'm
and
still
looking
cool.
silly.
I'm a week and a half away from turning 40, so
Are you
is that
really?
still young?
Yeah.
Forever.
Very
People
young.
live to like 110 now, so.
Forever.
I've heard you stand up, I don't know.
I know.
You're turning up my mind.
You've heard me stand up.
But you're turning 40, which is only 10 years more than the total number of years I've been in this district.
Oh, there you go.
So you're a baby. You were 10 when I started. And I think of myself as 37, 38. It's kind of a kick.
Okay, so I added some possible
I just like format.
language there.
I know how to format stuff in Microsoft Word to make it look nice. It does.
What are you working on? Rachel, what document are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
I can pull it, I'm pulling it up.
thank you.
So I just copied and created a new red line in our folder,
Well, I had already done that, so.
but you didn't like create a folder, so nobody could see it.
So, okay, so I created a folder called a folder called tentative agreements with 3 E's in it, so.
Perfect.
But my stickler part is that we have a different folder just for P&A documents in past practices. I'm
We
just
did?
trying to keep
I thought we
things
had
the
a TA
same.
one. Oh, well, yes, but didn't we actually sign them and then we started creating a red line? Like, do we need 2 separate things?
In the prior year, there's a P&A folder that has the red line, and then it has the final draft.
Of the entire P&A though.
Yes.
So I'm suggesting that we have one document that's just that section that Jill and I sign,
So
just
we're
to
not
reflect.
going to fully into the red line, the whole thing
I think we
yet.
will, but not until we've,
That's fine, I'm just being
Yeah.
clear.
yeah.
Okay. That was
Okay,
not
so
sassy.
she's got it up there, if everyone wants to look at it.
I don't
Rather
care.
than saying or a designee, do you say?
Or designee.
Or yeah, or her designee, or
I think that's where we are in
There.
2022.
their designee.
Their
That's what I've been
designee.
doing in our board policy language, is
Well,
there.
and that's what we had went through a couple years ago. I think it was one that Dr. Schumacher and Jay and I had done. We took out the he, she, and just put there on
I just
everything.
didn't want a designee.
Yeah. It has to be the superintendent's designee. Yeah.
Is it, who is either the deputy superintendent or, okay. There is only one deputy superintendent, right?
Yes.
But there are multiple associate superintendents?
There could be.
Okay. Are people satisfied with that?
Yes, we are. Well, I mean, I am.
Okay.
I shouldn't speak for everybody.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Guys, we checked off an issue. That's
You
awesome.
got TA. The last thing on your agenda was the possibility that there was time to frame and focus the prep time issue. Do folks feel like 15, 20 minutes is okay to do that, or do you want to hold
I'll
on?
leave that to
I'm
the
I'm
person.
getting thumbs down from my
Yeah.
colleagues, so
I
no.
understand that.
Well, then, since we're all together,
very
do we
efficient.
want to, I know we always sort of leave it on Jill and Rachel to bring agendas forward, and that's okay.
Mostly Rachel.
And/or you all can kind of take a look and get a sense of what will be on your agenda for next meeting. Let's confirm next meeting, and how long is the next one? Is it a longer one?
It's a full day.
Day.
Full day,
Yes.
okay. So
March
then
24th.
maybe Jill and Rachel give thought to that agenda, or do folks want to do it together now? Whatever makes sense. I got no preference.
I mean, we have, based on how we had
Yeah, we have a
previously
list.
ordered things, we had prep time, the cluster of late resignation issue statements from the district, PD, which was a continuation from last time, Those are kind of the next 4.
Yeah.
I feel like that's probably biting off a pretty big chunk.
Will the
Will the-
PLC
Yeah.
committee have met?
PLC.
We will have met.
Why don't we, I'm just going to throw out there and you can reject, but start with an update on PLC and possibility to work that, finish that, do prep time, and then late resignations.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Okay. Well, communication, Rachel usually sends that out. I don't know if she needs any feedback input or if you guys just stay to do that, but it appears to be you guys are finishing.
I think we just need to sign the thing. Linda and I and Jill and I need to sign the things that Jay turned into PDFs with signature. But
Whose name on it? I already had him sign it.
who?
Mike.
Oh, Mike did. Okay, great. So the MOU's done.
Jill, calendar committee?
Oh, yes, that's a great.
Yes, thank you.
That was Abby. But
Well, we
I
didn't have a
just-
committee, but yes, I needed to go talk to.
Yes,
Dr.
and
Dr.
Dr. Dennis stopped me and he asked me to let you guys know he's ready whenever you are.
And update on, I did talk with Dr. Bates, and he's meeting with, I won't have the name right, but a religion coalition that he's met with, so representatives from across the metro of all of the major religions. So he may have an update by then, too.
Great.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Lindsay, thank you for facilitating us on screen. You do a great job.
Thanks.
And Rachel, I might tell you that I no longer have an SMSD email, so probably as of tonight. So I'm same as Kevin's, it's just linda.seek.
Does it go away that fast?
I'm thinking probably so. Like Canvas is
I have
gone
to ask,
tonight.
Does it
and-
feel amazing?
Yeah. It feels complete. My mom asked me that. I feel like it was very hard to say goodbye to my kids, but then they said, "Don't you live in the East area?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll see you at Hen House probably this weekend." So, or Spin Pizza, Taco Republic, Salty Iguana, or any other food place. So, but yeah, it has been a very rewarding career, and I told him I'm fighting for public education, advocating just in a different way. So, and no more grading papers.
Make sure
You
you get that in.
can't truly understand that work until you've, I remember when I taught at the community college, I did 1. Well, that's not so bad.
Yeah.
2, 3, and then you gotta
Yeah.
make it all the way to 25 or whatever.
Anybody
Linda,
need-
I hope I see you at the K&E office sometime, maybe this summer or in another district.
Yeah, you may see me. I'm going to be in a few, so.
Sounds good. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and close the Zoom if it's that time.
Thank you.
We good?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'm meeting with Mike.
Linda.seek@knea.org.
Right.
Okay.
Because Kevin's just kind of gone AWOL. He's just moving.
I thought
He
he was
is
going
into
to invite
people.
us to his house sometime.
You what?
I thought he
Yeah.
was- In his pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have never been
I think he
invited to
owes us
Kevin's
that.
pool. How dare.